Welcome to Lesson 1 in Unit 8, Putting on a Show with Light and Sound. In this lesson, students will work to answer the question, how can we make sound? In this lesson, students are introduced to the anchoring phenomenon, a shadow puppet show. They discover how vibrations help create sound, and they brainstorm and draw a design for a musical instrument made from recycled materials. Students figure out that instruments can be created out of recycled materials, and the sounds instruments make are produced by vibrations. Students make connections to the storyline by using the engineering design cycle to help them design musical instruments. There are several opportunities for ELA and social studies cross-curricular connections throughout the lesson. You can look for specific standard connections in the Unit 8 Teacher Guide. This lesson will take approximately 5 days to complete. You'll begin the Lesson 1 Engage by introducing students to the anchoring phenomenon. You'll ask students to think about a puppet show and what they need to put one on. You'll play students a puppet show of the Three Little Pigs. And you'll ask them what they notice and wonder about the show. You'll also ask what they think they need to know in order to design their own show with puppets and music. Once students have their questions, you will guide them in creating categories for their questions on the driving question board using the steps provided in the teacher guide. Do not answer questions at this time or correct student thinking. They will explore their questions and explain this anchoring phenomenon throughout the unit. For example, if a student says something incorrect, you can say, "How could we figure that out?" Be sure to see the noted opportunity to attend to equity should the provided anchoring phenomenon not be compelling for your students. Students will find the anchoring phenomenon more compelling if they can connect to it personally. If you want to change the anchoring phenomenon for your context, keep the following questions in mind. Is it going to be relevant to my students' lives and/or particularly engaging to them? Is it going to motivate students to want to explain how materials make sound, how we see things, how different objects affect the path of light, and how we can communicate using light and sound? Here are examples of driving question boards from other K-5 units. They depict the students' questions in categories, some along with a drawn model from the unit. Some driving question boards are simple lists of questions or groups of sticky notes posted on chart paper. Teacher and students can manipulate and move around questions and label categories together. You'll then ask students what they need to make music and introduce a story about a community that wanted to make music. Use the Read Aloud Guide to read and discuss the book Ada's Violin with the class. During the reading, you can post the Recycle vocabulary card. You'll ask what kinds of problems we can solve by making instruments out of recycled materials, and have students view the Engineering Design Cycle journal page and explain that in this unit, students are going to use the Engineering Design Cycle to explore and solve problems. They are going to be engineers as they learn more about how they can use sound and light to design tools and create a puppet show. You'll post and discuss the design, research, and brainstorm vocabulary cards. For the Explore portion, you'll tell students that they saw a lot of different instruments in the book and ask how they think the instruments make sound. You'll discuss how you're going to draw a model of sound and use the model to talk and learn about things we cannot easily see. You'll have students draw a picture of something making sound on the Drawing Sound student journal page and encourage them to label their drawings. You'll then show students the kazoos from the MySci kit. You'll explain to students that they will investigate these objects and the sounds they make. You'll give each student a kazoo and let them explore the different ways to make sound. You'll also introduce the idea of humming. Note that the kazoos are considered consumables, and each student will keep their own labeled kazoo throughout the unit and take it home at the end. For the explain portion, you'll bring the class together and lead a discussion about students' observations from the investigation. You'll use the provided questions to guide your discussion around the question, how can we make sound? The goal of this class discussion is to develop a model based on evidence of the sounds and vibrations the kazoos made. You'll use the discussion to create the Lesson 1 summary chart. By the end of the discussion, students should understand that they can use instruments that vibrate and make sounds for their puppet show. You'll complete the first 2 rows of the chart during the explain and the last row during the elaborate. During the discussion, you'll post the Vibrate vocabulary card. You'll also show students a slow motion video of a moving guitar string to emphasize the concept of vibrations creating sound. You'll have students go back to their Drawing Sound student journal page and add any additional information they may have learned about sound. You'll ask them to add vibrations to their drawings. For the elaborate portion, you'll have students draw a picture of an instrument that they could make in their musical instrument drawing student journal page. You'll direct students to the scientific drawing rubric student journal page and go over the rubric, making sure students understand what the categories mean. Students will come back to these drawings throughout the unit. After students complete their drawings, you'll ask where they can label parts of their instruments that will vibrate to make a sound and how that sound will be made. You'll record the student responses in the 3rd row of the summary chart. For the evaluate portion, you'll have students complete the Does It Make Sound Quick Check student journal page. You'll then discuss each item as a class. To support student sense-making across the unit, orient them back to the driving question board. Ask, what did we learn about how we can make sound? And what new questions do we have? By the end of this lesson, students will have developed a model using recyclables to design an instrument, asked questions about how different objects make sound, and conducted an investigation to provide evidence that vibrating material makes sound. In Lesson 2, students will investigate how they can change the volume and pitch of sound. For the optional extend, you can explain to students that they are going to use a rope as a model of how sound moves. Discuss how models can help us understand real things that we can't easily see. You'll give 2 students each end of a rope, ask 1 student to move their end up and down, and have the class watch what happens. You'll then compare the rope's movement to that of rubber bands and guitar strings. You can ask students to draw a model that shows how these vibrations go from the object making sound to our ears and explain their thinking. You'll remind them to use the scientific drawing rubric to create a strong model. You'll then support students to develop an accurate model of how we hear sound using the How We Hear Model student journal page. For more information about this unit, visit mysidepartners.com.